Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I thought I'd do something really bold and different today. The last two were dreamy, and this time I want to get much more graphic, more bold. I'm using transparent blue and green gold, and possibly white, and then possibly a contrast. I've got some tissue prints here I did on white with white paint on tissue paper, and I will leave the links at the end, plus give you a video at the end to show you how to do those tissue prints. I like doing tissue prints on white with white because then when I glue it onto a piece of painting or mixed media, then I can glaze it any color I want afterwards. So I do enjoy doing white and black for graphic effect, and we'll see where we go from there. So I do like to try things that are different. And this is an inspiration book after all. So I'm learning and exploring, sometimes doing things I already know how to do, but always changing it. And I never do the same things twice. And then sometimes, like today, I like to be a little bit more bold and graphic and just have a big pop. And so I'm starting with my typical mark making, which is just intuitive mark making with some pencil crayons. I'm pressing a little darker than I did the last video because I do want some of these to show up at the end. So they're not just a matter of mark making. I do hope that some of the remnants of the pencil crayon will show up. Now, because this is an inexpensive mixed media paper, it's very thin, and I decided right away before I do any paint, I want to put a coating of matte medium all over the entire page. This gives a protective coating for the paper so that when I do a lot of wet paint and watch it flow and spray with my water, which I love doing, this way the pages won't buckle up because they are protected, and it makes it more like a canvas rather than a piece of paper. So I'm just fanning it around in different directions so that I don't see a lot of obvious brush strokes once it's dry. Now that it's dry, I'm going to tape over top of the coiled binding as I do on all these pages so that it protects them from getting sticky paint on them. There may be other times where I want to frame in a section, but in this case, all I did was tape over the coil. These are wax crayons. Any wax crayons, really, really inexpensive wax crayons for your children would work. The idea is that I'm using some colors that match the pencil crayons, but I'm using wax this time because some of them will act as resist. Now, it won't be much of a resist because I'm not pressing extremely hard. The harder you press on the wax, the more it resists paint later on. So I'm just having fun with some mark making. These are very deliberate marks that I know will show up because they are wax. They will not dissolve away. When I add a lot of fluid paint, it will sit on top of the wax. And unless I spray that with water and shoot it off of the wax, some of it will eventually stay over top of the wax and it won't be such a resist after all. But we'll see what happens. So I'm going to start off with my transparent blue and my green gold. And I'm going to give a good spray of water from my water spray, my favorite friend. I'm going to do that over top the entire page. And I do have another page of watercolor paper behind, which is bigger than my book page, so that it protects everything from any pages underneath. So let's start off with the green gold. And depending on where it hits the water and how much water it hits, it stays darker or it goes very fluorescent. I do love these high flow acrylics because they do have a lot of pigment in them, but when they hit the water, they become brighter, and I enjoy that. I enjoy the flexibility of that. So I'm just making some random shapes as per usual, and I know you perhaps I say this all the time, but perhaps you think I really do plan things. Every piece that I work on for you is intuitive. The only thing I knew of today was the two colors I was going to use, and that I was going to do some wax resist and for sure do my collage with tissue paper. But I had no idea until this goes down on the paper and the paint starts to flow. I have no idea where I'm going to go with it. You can see there's a lot of water, and you could see where some of it stays white. That's the white wax crayon below. So the water flows away from those white areas because of the wax. I dabbed that with uh, Kleenex just to remove some of that pool of water because it would have taken way too long to dry. Now I want to do my one of my favorite techniques where I put paint down and then I use a patterned paper towel. In this case, it's got swirls of dots, and I'm going to use that paper towel. As you can see, there's the pattern. I'm going to press down hard, firmly, and that will lift paint and reveal some dots, hopefully. Now it's going to show up better on the blue than it did the green just because of the color. It was effective on the green, just not as boldly. So I'm going to try that again, and this time I'll do it with a little less water on the page, a little more fresh out of the jar on a slightly drier page. And again, because I put matte coating over top of this entire page first, none of this paint is getting absorbed into the paper, so it's actually sitting on the surface of that matte medium. So let's try this again. Hopefully I can show more of the pattern of the paper towel when this is finished. And there you go, much more effective. So the problem before was I had too much water on there. If I was to do this technique with a heavier, not a high flow or a fluid acrylic, but something a little heavier, it would even be more obvious. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the blue and try and pick up a little more obvious pattern, this time with the blue this time. You can see that there isn't quite as much water as there was with the green. What I'm doing is holding the palm of my hand down, because if I use my fingers, you end up having it lift with the shape of fingers, and I didn't want that. So that's really effective. I like that a lot. There were already dots there that I put down purposely from when I did the marks with the blue wax crayon. So this kind of blends with that and it just becomes more dots. I'm going to use rubbing alcohol on a Q-tip and lift some of the middle of those blue circles. And the reason why it's lifting so easily and showing white underneath is because there was white wax there. I just felt like I wanted a slightly different effect from those blue ovals, and I like the two-tone where it shows the white. They become a little more dramatic. I like that. And because white is my neutral here for now, I just don't mind revealing a little more white. I'm going to do some more. Now that this is completely dry, I'm going to put a solution of slightly watered down blue, the same blue. What I want to do is paint over that blue area, and because this will be watered down, it's going to be semi-transparent. I don't want to mask over those dots from the pattern of the paper towel. I just want to get a little more blue over top of that area. I'm using a shorter bristled but a soft bristled brush to blend it around. And you'll notice I'm only going towards the green. I'm not going over top of that white right to the green. I did that because I want to leave some white there and see what happens later. It's almost like negative painting. It's almost like I'm giving a shape to that white area down the center strip now. And plus, I'm trying to stay away from having the blue especially right now. I'm trying not to let the blue, I'm getting it up to the green, but trying not to touch the green because otherwise it will turn a different shade. It will become more of a turquoise. And right now I wanted to keep the integrity of this blue and this beautiful green. So you'll see I'm trying hard not to overlap if I can help it. And I've zoomed in, I'm delicately picking out some of the areas that were white and turning them into blue. I just wanted to not cover over some of those green shapes down below. And I gave that a little spray to disperse it a little bit, and I'll dab some of that back on the top. Let's get some of the bottom dealt with as well. I don't want that much white on the page. I do have it in my mind that I'm going to use my white tissue prints over a lot of this, but I just don't know where yet. So I'm trying to add more color in patches. I won't know where I want deeper color until I bring that tissue out and get some ideas. And the whole concept of that is I'm going to start off using white tissue prints. And because it's white on tissue, if I have it going over too much of just blank white paper, then it won't reveal much of the pattern on the tissue. So eventually I'm going to add more color. Again, I want to wait to see where I add the tissue print. This is quite fun. I'm enjoying where this is going. And again, I had no idea what was going to happen. It's all about paint flow for me. And because I added more blue over top of the blue area, I'm going to enhance the value of the green as well. This is, I'm using the same two colors, but I'm making it darker and more opaque. It's still a semi-transparent paint, but because I'm not diluting it with water, it is slightly more opaque, and therefore I'm adding to the value of those two colors. Because I did it to the blue, I wanted to have a heavier value to the green so that the weight of the two of them is matched. They've got completely different shapes all around the page, but the values match. And right now they bounce off quite equally with the weight of the white all around the page. They almost all three have similar impact. Because the white is such a contrast, it becomes bold. Not sure, but we'll see. Everything can be changed. Remember my favorite phrase? It's just paper. Now, obviously, I let that dry. I went away and did other things and I came back. So now that it's completely dry, and it has dried lighter, it always does, I'm looking at the two areas on the bottom and the top left of the page, and I'm finding there's just too much white. Here's my white tissue print, one of the options, and you can see that if I put that over top of the blank white areas of paper, they won't be very dramatic. So I'm just doing that as a trial run. Plus, I've decided I want to do orange as my accent. I do like to do a third color as an accent. Now, I'm not going to use this orange tissue print. I'm just placing it there to show you and to ensure myself that that accent color will look good with these other two colors. So I'm just using this as inspiration, but I will not glue it down. What I did to make that tissue print in orange was this tube of quinacridone nickelazzo gold. It's one of my favorite colors. So I'm just using the same color that I used as a guideline from the tissue, and I'm putting it in a dispenser there, a tray, and I'm going to add a little bit of water. It's already a semi-transparent, but again, there's so much pigment here that I need to water it down. I want to start lighter, and then I can always go darker later on. I'm going to test it on a cardstock and make sure that it's the transparency that I'm looking for. I've got the same soft brush with a bit of a point, and that way I can cover bigger areas, but also use the point if I need. I love that color, and I already know it's going to look nice because I held the tissue print over and the colors worked. So I'm starting off very, very light. It's very watered down. That area right there, you can see that it stayed very dark when I lifted the brush away. That's because it's pooling on top like it is there as well. That's because there's a lot of white wax underneath there. It's not getting absorbed into the paper. So I'm just working around. I'm not going to do all of the white areas, but I'm going to work around just to create flow and movement and energy around the page. You can see that there's so much white wax in the middle of that one that it didn't get absorbed at all. So I dabbed that away. Same thing's happening there. It just stayed as a dark pool, almost looked like brown. Here it seems to be more just paper. You can see the difference. It's not beating up on the surface. I'm just delicately moving around the page wherever I would like to cover up the white. Again, I'm keeping it quite light at first. And I can always add more intensity of this orange. Quinacridone Nicolazo Gold is an orange color. It's a beautiful, beautiful color. So there again, now that I know I'm going to use white tissue print over top that area, I need to go darker. In order to have it contrast with the white print when I glue it down, the best results are when you have a strong background underneath. So I just keep adding more and more intensity to this Quinacridone Nicolazo Gold, especially there, so that it'll really pop and show up when I glue on the white tissue print. I wanted to actually have very strong hits of this color in a couple of areas, whether or not it gets covered with tissue or not. Again, just trying to balance the weight. And I do like playing with shades and levels of depth and dimensions. So having two different shades of the orange helps do that. I'm going to let that dry. Now it's completely dry. And you can see now that when I put a white tissue print over top, the colors of the negative areas of the printed tissue, all those areas that are negative and transparent, that's going to pick up the colors below. I'm not going to use this print, but I want to show you how fun it is. And that would have been really amazing to put down and use. But because the transparent areas were quite narrow, it wouldn't have shown my fun work with all the patterns that I did below. And I would like them to show up. So I've got this more subtle one, and it's a more subtle print. It's more lacy, but it's also not a really strong hit of paint on the tissue. It's quite distressed. So I'm hoping in using this one that more of my background will show through. And the white will be a little more subtle than the first one I laid down. So I'm just trying to decide how to arrange it so I can best pick up patterns below. And I'm happy with this one. And also, so what I'm going to do now is fold away so that I can cut the rectangle that I need to fit the page. So I'm just giving it a fold and pressing hard so I'll know where to cut. I'll take this away and cut it for you and put it back down. So now I have the cut piece of tissue print. Notice that it doesn't go to the top of the page. That's because I want the top of the area to be true to the colors below. And so I'm going to use a wet, watered, clean water with a clean paintbrush, and I wet it with the water, and I use that to draw the areas that I want to tear away from the tissue. The reason why I do that is being wet, it dissolves the tissue and allows me to tear away exactly where I need it. If I was to just glue this page down as it was, you would see the straight edge of the top of the tissue there. And this way it keeps it a very soft organic edge. And once I paint matte medium and glue that down, that tissue edge will disappear. So I like the top of the page there, and I don't want to lose the integrity of that. So that's why I didn't want full coverage of the tissue, because even though the white tissue paper will dissolve and get more transparent than it is and less cloudy, you would still see the edge of it if I would have left that straight. So even though I'm only using tissue print in the bottom 3/4, I want to do a coating of matte medium all over the entire page, just so that all of the paper is protected the same way. Plus, I never know exactly where to stop, so I'm just doing the entire page. I'm putting way more thickness of the matte medium in the bottom 3/4 because I need that to help dissolve the tissue paper. Now I'm going to place it down. And this is where the magic happens. Love, love, love this technique. I'm going to use a silicone paintbrush, which has got a large flat surface, and I will use that to spread this down instead of a paintbrush, because a paintbrush that has a chance of pushing and moving the tissue as it's wet and wrecking the pattern. This way, I'm doing it delicately, by the way. I'm pressing on an angle to keep it flat into the paper, but I made sure that I didn't overpress. Look at the dramatic effect that that has had with putting that white tissue print over top. You can't see the tissue paper any longer. All you see is the paint that was on it. And I love this technique. And now that it's dry, you can see even more transparent areas that show because the tissue just got dissolved. Now I want to also do a black tissue print over top of that. But before I do that, I want to make a little bit more obvious some of that white. It's almost like spider web pattern. And I want to bring out a little bit more of that at the very bottom, because the black tissue print I'm going to glue on next isn't going to cover this bottom area very much. So I want some of this webbing detail, spider web detail, to be revealed once I put the black tissue print down. So I'm taking a very, very, very fine brush and some fluid white that I already had in a dispenser, and there's a close-up. You don't have to be perfect, but I'm just trying to enhance some of that spiderweb pattern. And it will show up once I put the next tissue print over top. I love having fun. At this point, I'm well aware of where this painting is going. It has told me loud and clear what it wants to be. So this is the time when I have a lot of fun just kind of enhancing and highlighting things that are already there. I don't have to overthink it. It's there. I like it. I'm just going with it. Again, doesn't have to be perfect because the tissue print was very distressed. It wasn't perfect either. I don't like things to be perfect. I like them to be organic. Now, you might think that the flow and pattern and the movement of this page is already fine as it is, and I like how it looks, but it's too two-dimensional. I really want something to pop forward, and that will be the black print. What I did was I wet a brush and used the lid of the transparent blue paint tube to enhance a little bit of that blue, because that very first one on the left was a little muddy, and I wanted to keep the brightness of the blue. I'm making sure I dry that really well. Again, that was over top of wax, so it took a little longer to dry. And now I've got this black print, and I don't want all that negative space of tissue paper over top of the work that I just did. So what I'm doing is just going to find again the areas that I'll use to cut away to fit on the page. And then later I'm going to actually remove more of the tissue so that I'm almost only exclusively gluing down the areas where the black is. But we'll do it one stage at a time. First of all, I'm going to mark the edges, and I'll cut that apart, just like I did the white print. There I have it cut, but again, I do not want it to be all of this tissue over top of everything. So I'm going to use again, a clear water and a clean paintbrush. It's picking up the color below only because it's wet and it's showing the transparency. This just helps me tear away organically along the edges of all this black. Because the black pattern that I painted on this tissue is organic and rough edges, I want tearing away of the tissue to be the same way. And that way it helps dissolve it. Once I glue this down with matte medium, a lot of that rough organic edge of tissue paper will dissolve completely and you won't even see where the edges are. The first white print was done with stencils. This black pattern on the tissue paint I did with a paintbrush. So that's why they look so different. I just took a paintbrush and just went nuts with it. And I love how organic that was. So again, I'm just trying to remove some of the excess tissue. I can't do all of it or it'd be too delicate to lay down and glue down. But for the most part, I've got most of that done. So I'm going to cover again the entire page with matte medium once again. Sorry for my head. And the more layers of matte medium I put on here, the more it stiffens the paper and makes it more resilient to the work I need to do. And again, I put it on very thick so that it'll help the tissue paper dissolve. The only thing that won't dissolve is the black paint that's on the tissue paper. Look at how dramatic this is. Absolutely crazy in love with this. So happy I did this. I feel like it needed that black just to give it a real dramatic pop. I hope you agree. Please feel free to give me your comments if you like what I did or if you liked it as it was. I love hearing your comments. That definitely popped. It was the effect that I was going for. Again, this is an inspiration book. Now, I could look at this in years to come and I could say, you know what? I love the top half of this. That inspires me. I might crop the idea and say that gives me an idea for a painting later on. I might get an idea, inspiration from this, from any area of this page or the entire page. I'm pressing with my finger a little harder over top the black paint because that's very dense and it's harder to dissolve into the page that it's on. So I'm just encouraging that by pushing it down. Look at that. I'm just so pleased with this. I like that I've got some of the white showing in a pattern, but definitely the black is the star of the show. What I want to do is give him more dimension and make some of that green gold pop. So I'm going to pick a few areas, and what I'm doing at this point, I'm making it pop and I'm giving more dimension and depth to the page. I do love playing with dimension and depth. It helps with the energy on a piece. So I'm just decided to make it really bright in the middle there, and look at that. Look how that popped. Very glad I did this. If it didn't look good, I could have just taken spray it off and wipe it back and leave it as it was, because there are so many coats of matte medium on here now. That would make that possible. But I absolutely love what I'm doing is balancing the weight around the page of the green. And again, giving more depth and dimension. This is almost done. I'm just making sure that there's enough green that it's bright enough, because it will soften and dry a little lighter. So I'm just being really bold and going really dark. I'm keeping it wet with the water though, because if I did the green right out of the tube, it would have been a darker green, and I really wanted this fluorescent color, this neon color. And I'm just adding a little bit right there as well. It also, when I do that, it enhances the white detail of that spider web. I hope you agree that this really made it pop. I hope it gives you ideas for what you can do. And for sure, watch the video on doing white tissue prints so that you'll have your own stash and then you can do similar lessons that I've shown you here. Of course, they're going to be different because they're going to be your tissue prints, but that's the fun of all this. But I just love how gluing down a tissue print dramatically alters a painting. And you cannot deny the fact that this is a dramatic result. And I'm just enhancing the white interior of those three ovals to make them pop as well. They still stay in the background, but they pop a little bit. So here we go, the big reveal. It always looks good when you take the tape off. And I'm very happy with this. I'm very, very inspired by this. Gives me ideas for all sorts of things that I can do. I thank you for watching. What I want to show you is the dramatic effect of adding the two tissue prints. I hope you agree with what it did. If not, it shows you where you could stop if you didn't want to do that to the end like I did. Thanks again for watching. I enjoy your support. I love doing this for you. Please subscribe and like, and for sure comment. I enjoy it. I read every comment and I reply to you. So have a good day. I hope you're inspired, and we'll see you next time.